Well, welcome back to the next session here as we get into a fun topic that I love to talk about, and that is none other than
Discipline.
discipline. I don't even know how to spell it. Discipline. Well, in order to have a good, controlled, organized camp, you are the front line defense when it comes to discipline. Okay? Mr. Tim and I, we can't be everywhere when the kids are misbehaving, and you will have kids that misbehave. So what do? I have a kid in my group who will not, or maybe not, maybe he's just not obstinate, but okay, he does something that is a disciplinary matter. So how do we assess whether something should be disciplined and whether it should not? Because we all have different tolerances when it comes to behavior, don't we?
Sure.
And so how do we assess when something should be disciplined, when we should just kind of let it go? What do you
Right.
think?
And here's the thing. You're walking with these kids day in, day out. A lot of times as the week progresses on, things get tired. You've been an excellent counselor. You have led this team. You have done everything. You've been the line leader. You have been engaged with them at lunchtime. But there's just a kid that just continues to disobey or not follow what the camp rules are. And as far as camp rules, we keep them simple because we want them to be able to enjoy it, but yet they're there for their safety and for their well-being and for the safety and well-being of everyone else also. So they are defined. They continue to then pick up the walnuts, pick up the sticks. They're the ones they're throwing a rock, or, well, I'm a baseball player and I got to practice. No, this is not the time. And so even in doing so, you need to address the situation right away. You don't just let them throw one and, oh, well, we let them get away with it. No, we address the situation right away. Now, to address the situation, I want to, hey, Johnny, I'll use Johnny and Jane. Johnny, I just saw you pick the rock up. What do we say about the rocks? So you want them to answer your questions. Oh, I'm not supposed to pick up the rocks. Okay, so what should we do? Put the rocks down. Okay, good job, Johnny. Let's put that rock down. Come on, let's go. Let's get with our team. And let it go. Don't try to build any more. If they answer correctly, they know. The child knows. So you're working with the camper and you're trying to progress them in a positive way. Let's say then next thing you know, they're at another station. They're back picking up rocks. Well, at this time, hey, Johnny, what did we say about the rocks back here? Don't pick them up. Okay, what do you need to do? I need to put them down. Okay, let's do that. And they put it down. Then you might want to look at, well, let me move this child away from this rock pile, because that might be a great deterrent for them to be able to get them away from the rock pile. So you look at your surrounding areas and look for their safety, and for them, put them on a flat grassy or a flat sandy area or something at wherever station you're at. So adjust the area of them so they're not tempted by that rock.
Yeah.
Then thirdly, if they continue to persist or they go back and hey, we need to take measures and say, look, if this is happening and you do this again, I am going to have to take you to talk to Pastor Mark, Mr. Tim, the camp director, because we can't have you throwing rocks for the safety and well-being of others. You need to put the rocks, and hopefully they'll finish down. And so if they finish your statement, then put it down. And remember, if you do this again, I told you we would go speak with whoever the camp director is, Pastor Mark, myself, our summer intern, as they're having these issues, but you must follow through. So as you do this and talking with them, you're going to correct their behavior. You're going to make the modifications that are needed. You're going to reinforce it. But if there comes a time that this is just a repetitive behavior that is endangering others, and you tell them you're going to bring them to us, don't make a threat. Follow through. It's not a threat, but follow through with that promise. Hey, we need to go. If they do it again, you need to bring them to us, and then we will discuss the situation with them.
Yeah, so just to review a couple things. So one, what Mr. Tim said, respond immediately. Respond immediately, okay? If you let things go, they just get worse. Here's a side note. One thing that you got to keep in mind, that there might be instances, the example that Mr. Tim used with walnut or rock, kid picking it up, and it continues to be persistent. it might not be that the kid is actually a rebel or just a bad kid or something like that. It could be that they're just really absent-minded and they start thinking other things. The reason I'm saying this is because I have a child that's just like this. So here's a word that I want to throw out here. It's another fruit of the Spirit. Patience, okay? So be patient, but do respond. And you want to respond firmly, but not in anger, okay? So we want to do our best not to raise our voice to the child, all right? So you want to come in a firm way, but not in anger. And we need to make sure that we understand forms of discipline. So one form of discipline that Mr. Tim said was like the final straw. I'm taking them to Mr. Tim or Pastor Mark, okay? That'd be kind of like the final straw for you. Another form of discipline is just simple coming up to a child while they're in chapel. They might be talking to another kid and just coming up to them and saying, you need to please stop talking right now and listen. So that's the other thing, is that when you discipline, make sure you ask them questions about what they're not supposed to be doing, but then ask them, what should you be doing right now? Because they should be doing something, wherever they're at. So if they're at a station, what should they be doing? Listening or doing whatever their craft or whatever it might be. So ask them what they're not. Should they be doing that? No. What should you be doing? Should be doing this. Okay. So make sure you ask questions. All right. Anything else that we need to talk about when it comes to this discipline, as we've kind of thought through a little bit of the process?
Yeah, two things that as you've been talking, as far as calling them directly, immediately responding. You don't want to call them out in front of an entire group and being loud and boisterous, and as far as like derogatory or talking down to them. You may need to take that child aside while they're at the station there, within the eye visibility of others, but you may have to walk 10 or 15 feet away with them and get eye level with them. A lot of times when I go to talk with a child and discipline with them, I'll kneel down and I'll get eye level with them and I will communicate with them, because I want them to see exactly what I'm saying, that I mean what I say. So pulling a child aside from a sense to 10 or 15 feet away from the group, that you can work with that child one-on-one. Now, I use the term pulling. That's another no-no. We never want to put our hands on children. You never strike a child. You never grab a child. You never do anything to grab onto a child. I do say this because as far as hands-on children can be considered in a form of abuse as far as grabbing on. And so we do not handle these children in any way. The only way that you would ever have a child where you would have to restrain them in some way, shape, or form is if they were going to fully injure themselves, such as like running out into a road or running towards a lawnmower or a piece of equipment that may be running around or something where you're trying to save the child from a further endangerment or harming themselves. But other than that, and I have never seen an instance where we've had to do with something with that, but you never put your hands on a child.
Mr. Tim, what would be a behavior that would warrant not just a verbal warning or anything like that, but would warrant the helper or team leader to take them immediately to you?
Sure. And we've had these situations where a fight breaks out. Two kids are getting competitive in a sport or something, and it may be something that you're sitting there watching, and then all of a sudden a kid trips or gets tripped by another kid, and it may be incidental, but that anger from that kid may carry over or may even be right there, and he jumps up and he may want to swing and he may throw a punch. And it's when another camper strikes another camper. And so in that regards, or maybe they get so mad or they're trying to put them in a chokehold, here's the thing. They may end up you may have to see something like all of a sudden you turn around and they're like play wrestling. Hey boys, need to keep your hands to yourself or whatever it is. But when it comes down to it, if somebody ends up striking, you need to immediately get over there and get between them and then say, okay, this is a time. You two, I just saw you two fighting. We need to take this directly up to the camp director, to Pastor Mark, to me, summer intern, bringing it up immediately when a kid strikes or when a kid's fighting.
Yeah, and that's good. And another one would be, okay, if a kid just runs away from the group defiantly, right? So in a case like that, a kid he had an altercation with either another camper, or she was really upset that you told them not to do something or to do something, and they've had it, and they just run away from you. What would you do in that case?
Listen, at that point, you need to just pretty much try to get in front of them, direct them back to the group, say, hey, we need to come back to the group. If at that point they don't listen, then you need to stay with that child, but have another team leader or another assistant come get us. If they won't come up to us, that could be another thing that maybe they did. They fought or they got upset or that kind of thing, and they ran away, and well, we need to go, we can't have this behavior. Then if they won't come up to us and they defy even coming up to us, that's when you need to say, if we don't walk up there, one of the directors or one of the leaders are going to walk down here and go through a discipline process with you. And so therefore, you're going to have to send another leader up to the pavilion to get one of us to come back and talk with the child. And from that point, it's been very few. I can probably count a handful of times in the years that I've been within camps of a child actually doing this. But at that point, I'll walk back. And when it comes down to something like this, I'll walk back with my master sheet, and it will have the contact list. I'll have the camper name, the information, and I will talk with them. And I will say, look, if you can't be part of this camp, and I'll start dialing the phone number, and I'll say, look, I've got the phone number right here. Now, we can either change the behavior, or you're going to have to head home, because we can't have you participate in a camp like this because it's pulling away from what we're intending for this camp to be. So if we have to come down there, that's usually a drastic measure, and usually it changes the kids' tune real fast and then their behavior. So if they won't come up to the pavilion, if they strike another camper immediately, that's when you need to get us.
Yeah, that's good. One other reason why you might come, and we kind of mentioned it a little bit, is that if a camper threatens another camper's life to some extent, whether that's verbally or some other way, then that would be another recourse where you have to bring that kid up to Mr. Tim. Make sure you bring him to Mr. Tim. Okay. Okay, so we've mentioned some of these already, but in discipline, we've talked about the do's, what we kind of do, should be the process, but what are some of the don'ts? What should the kids, or what should our helpers, our team leaders not do when it comes to discipline? You've mentioned one: never strike, hit, grab, pull, whatever, one of the campers, unless their safety is in jeopardy.
Yeah, that, and then also as far as calling them out in front of the entire group, we
Right.
said that, so just pulling them away, not pulling the child, but bringing the child away, from the group, from kind of an earshot, so you can then converse with the child and work through the discipline process with them.
Yeah.
And so discipline is a loving thing to do to them, to help correct them and correct the behavior and to encourage them to do what's right.
Another one I think that we've already mentioned was don't respond in anger. We never want you to just yell to the top of your lungs, and scream and yell at the kids. It's not a very good example of Jesus Christ, expressing the image of Jesus Christ to these kids. And so we want to be kind, we want to be firm in our discipline, but we don't want to burst out in anger. In fact, it really doesn't help the situation in your discipline if you're yelling at the kids. You want to make sure that you start off with a lower voice, and then if you have to raise it, then you can raise it. But if you go to all the way to Z with your voice, then you can't go any further, all right? So we want to make sure that we don't get there, okay? So don't respond in anger. And it may be the case where if you're just getting so frustrated with this kid that you need the help of your team leader and your other assistants to come alongside and just say, hey, listen, can you deal with this camper for right now? Because I just can't do it. I'm too angry right now. Mm-hmm. And make sure you're wise and you try to do that as well. I know it's hard, but you can do it. Anything else in the don't category that we're missing?
No, that was a good point that you said as far as just a tag team. Tag, you're in. I'm at my fill with this camper that I've done all I can do, but I need to go ahead. I will work with these other 5 or 6 that are in this group, but I really need you to focus on this one, and I need to take time away.
That's what Mr. Tim does for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're in.
So yeah, that's right. So loving, effective discipline, though no one normally likes receiving it, it needs to be given. It needs to be given. And we come back to the whole purpose of the matter. Why do we discipline? Because we want to have an organized, we want to have a controlled camp so that the gospel can be proclaimed and the kids can hear. And we want it to be fun. If we don't have discipline, in all reality, camp is not fun, especially for you. And so you want to start in a loving, firm way, definitely at the beginning, respond quickly, immediately to those little situations, and you will have a better experience at camp. Most definitely you will. So Proverbs 12:1 says, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid.